Said, bow with the bada bang a dang diggy 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 diggy. Says, up chuck the boogie boogie. Bang a dang diggy diggy. Up chuck the boogie boogie. Oh! I want the love. I want the hate. I want. Okay. What we have here is a mess. But what we're going to turn this mess into is awesome coolness. Some of you all might remember this amplifier from the 300 24 pill experiment that we built. Yes, this is going to be my buddy's 300's backup amplifier, but with a BBI twist to it. We robbed all the Toshibas out of this amp, and then we converted it into, well, a beautiful hate sex machine that we call his 24 pill amplifier. This is a sin bin, electronic sin bin effort bucket, but at the core of it, it's like I told him when I took it apart, this is a really good box. The problem is that there was some kind of imbalance that was happening here. And every technician this thing had been to, their solution to the problem was to change the pill instead of figure out what was causing the imbalance here. So we've got some fried fricasseed chicken dinner going on up in here, up in the front end of this. But maybe good daddy BBI already knows what the hell's going on and doesn't need to stress too awful bad about that. Just saying. It's so obvious it's painful. This balancing resistor's been toast. This one's been toast at some point. There's been a lot of pop pills in this thing over the years. Like these, this one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. We're going to fix it. This is just the first step. So I saved all the metal screws, the sheet metal screws that hold down the transistors. I saved all the parts. We're most likely not going to reuse these because they do little to nothing for us. Taking into account this guy is already on a supercapacitor. Yeah. So this little bit of capacitance was great. I used to do this in a lot of different boxes and still would today if most of my guys hadn't jumped to the supercapacitor technology. This helps keep the voltage a little bit smoother. But when you're running all your shit by 500 farad supercapacitors, not needed. But we're going to pull all these parts that are just laying here out. We're going to go through and we're going to wash this thing. We're going to give it the douche, and we're going to restore this girl back to her former glory, but we're going to do it with HGs. So on that note, let's go. Okay, so here's our 24 pill electrical sin bin, and I really like that term, sin bin, because that's what this is, a big box of sin. This is our affected area. We're not going to worry about that, how that resistance value is 100 ohms. We're not going to see that. And we're not going to go over here and we're going to not look at the resistance values on some of these output resistors. We're not going to look. We're just going to look away. Here, we'll just. Anyhow, in the affected area over here in the corner, and along with many of these other pill pockets, the metal has cupped up from the sheet metal screws that they've used. So what I've got to do, my mission that I have to take on, is to desolder this whole board. There's a lot of little solder flick that's like on every cotton picking thing up in here. So I'm going to wash it with everybody's favorite cleaning agent. Today, showcased on the Home Shopping Network, is 91% isopropyl alcohol, preferably the Rite Aid Persuasion. We are going to proceed to give this thing a douche, and with a slight vinaigrette scent to it. We're going to make sure that there's no solder flick left in here, and all the thermal compounds going to get washed off the traces or off the heatsink. So I just had to show the beginning of the aftermath. There's a lot of solder work in here that I got to go through and redo. I want to reflow. I have to suck a lot of solder off the board, so I'm going to sit here with my solder sucker for probably about 2 hours and just, well, de-solder stuff. There it is. There's focus. I had to take hands on the old manual. And we got to go through and we got to make sure that we get rid of all the little burned up bits like this here, and you know, straighten some stuff out. We're going to change out some resistors. We're not going to change the tune that awful much, except to help compensate for the differentiation in transistors from Toshiba's to the HG2879 16D08s, which my experience has not been that catastrophically different. It's been pretty easy to compensate for it, but as we can clearly see, the arrogant bastard that took all this apart in the first place, he left a little bit of a mess, but not so much of a mess that he wouldn't be able to come through and clean it up with his level of technology. So away we go. So our problem child section is this section right here. This one right here. And because this camera has got the worst up-close focus in history, you can't see it, but the whole heat sink is like puckered up around this end of the pill, or pardon me, around this end of the pill and this end of the pill. So we just washed this end of the amplifier down. That's all we did, is I washed from here down. And I just wanted to take a hot moment and say I've seen toilets in India that had less schmoo come running out of them. That's disgusting. But what you're not seeing, let me run the ISO gain up a little bit. Is look at all the schmoo that come out from underneath the board. Because the board is actually elevated. There's a gap that's here. See this? It's grody. That was all in the thermal paste. All this was in the thermal paste and locked up around those transistors. Let's see what the other side gives us. I'm sure it's going to be just as yummy looking. Okay, so got this side all douched a little bit. Well, I'm gonna blow this out with an air compressor tomorrow. Just want to get all the shit out from underneath the board. That's what this side looks like, and I'm gonna have to clean this towel. Not the paper towel, I'm gonna actually physically have to clean the towel that's underneath this. That's alright, it's part of the burden. But, getting started. Now that we've got all the major hunks and chunks out of this thing, what I'm going to do is I'll come back and I'm going to taper drill countersink. I've got orange spots on my friggin' hand from this thing. This must have been in a smoking environment at some point or other. I'll come back and I'm going to countersink each one of these holes for the pill pockets. And yeah. And we're going to cream up 24 transistors after we check all the parts. Like we'll go through and I'm going to check all these caps, because these caps get really friggin' hot on the outputs. We're going to check all the caps, we're going to check all of that stuff, and then we're going to start reassembling this thing. Believe me, this is going to be cool when we get done. It looks like a ragged bag of crap right now, but believe me, this is going to be really neat when we get done. Okay, let's get back over here and let's talk about this for a second. So, I think where we left off is I was going to wash it. Please pardon me, you guys. It's been a couple days since I filmed the last segment to which you just watched, so there might be a little bit of repeat. I washed it, and I went through and I chamfed out all the holes for all the transistors, all the pill pockets. That's our biggest problem with this style of building and using sheet metal screws, is that'll bubble up. I went through and I've been picking out little flicks of solder, like There's a little tiny solder bridge that's right here. And from your guys' perspective, you can't see it. There. There's just a lot of little tiny solder work I got to go through and clean up. Like I got to pop this solder bridge that's in here out. I've been pulling flicks of solder out like this all over this thing, but we've got it really cleaned up. And this board, for as old as this amp is, has come back shockingly well. Now, we don't know what keeps causing this 4-pill section to have issues. This section has been burned up a lot. There's just so many different 10-ohmer wannabes in here that we know that this one section has a serious issue. And so did this one over here. Okay, we've got different input resistors. We're going to redo all of that. And we're going to go and problem solve all of that. Like we'll pull and we'll pop all these caps off the top. We're going to measure them all. And we're going to look at all of them. And we're going to go figure out what the problem is, where the imbalance is actually coming from. Is it from when some guy took the soldering iron and smacked it against the wire too hard or whatnot? We don't know. But I know I got a ton of time and energy into getting the pill pockets clean now because there's so much old schmoo in there and there's so much old solder flick and there's so much old little pieces of wire and stuff. We got the pill pockets all cleaned out. We're going to take advantage of that. Well, we've got it all nice and clean. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to mount down the transistors and we're going to get them soldered in place. Because we got, short of some little tiny solder flake everywhere, we've got our operational field here, the place that we're going to work. We've got that pretty well cleaned up and schmoo free. We're going to take advantage of that. We're going to paste up all 24 of the transistors. We're going to mount them down. We're going to solder them in place. So when we come back, this is going to have 24 brand new transistors in it, and we are going to start figuring out why this section keeps popping transistors, and hopefully we don't find anything. I hope that the metal being curved up underneath the transistor in this area, because we've seen quite a few spots of that where the metal and the heatsink was popped up and wasn't letting the transistor sit perfectly flat, that was our problem, and we're not going to find anything else. But if we do, hell man, we're going to change it. It's like we got to change out this balancing resistor, this one, that one, this one, that one, this one, that 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 one. Build all new flybacks for it. Yeah. And then we're going to come through and we're going to try and keep this as close to its original stock condition that we can get for the most part. For the most part, there are going to be some little upgrades in here. I put a picture up on Facebook the other day about, do I have the technology to rebuild this? And the answer to that question is, I believe I do. I don't necessarily feel that these two pieces of 8 gauge feeding way down here at the end are doing justice to these 4 transistors down here at this end. And that could be part of our problem as well. Same thing goes with the negative distribution bus. My opinion, this should have a little bit heavier wire on it. And if anything, I have one of the positive leads over here, the other positive lead down here, and then in turn I have a negative lead here, and then the other negative lead here. That way we get full crossing. The positive lead here has to cross over here to get access to the ground on this side. That electrically makes these even, and the same thing going on this side. Flip-flop those, make that even, and it also makes the sum total ground distribution inside the cabinet roughly at the same potential, because it'll have ground pickup on this end of the cabinet and also an even amount of ground pickup on that side of the cabinet. But I don't think I got enough wire for this. The way I want to do it. The way I want to do it. Oh yeah, I got enough. Do I have enough black aught? 1/0. Nope. Okay, so before I go any further, I need to go buy wire. So we got all the transistors in. There's no doubt about that. So now the next 5 hours of my life, 4 hours of my life, are going to be dedicated to going over every single solder joint in this amp. And as we can all clearly see here, the front side of this has been taken apart so many times over the years that I've got to go through and I'm going to completely reflow all these joints. Okay? Just on the front side of the transformers. And while I'm here, I've got to lift each one of these banks of capacitors out. I've got to test them. This one, and this one, and this one, and this one. I was really quite shocked with how many screws were barely holding the heatsink, especially on this side. So, needless to say, yeah, I got my work cut out for me. That's okay. That's what I'm here for. This is my job. I wouldn't want it any other way. I got to do both sides. The input and the outputs are just as butchered. So we're going to go through and we're going to reflow this whole side, solder down all the transistors, and we're going to check all the caps. So I think I cracked the code. Let me show you what I mean. This is the 2-pill section that has been burning up left, right, 2 times left to center. Okay, and I can tell you what everybody's done. I've taken this whole thing apart. I checked these caps, checked this cap, checked all these caps, checked this cap, checked all the resistors, checked everything. And I was sitting here, I was soldering up this new bridge thing that I'm going to show you here in just a second last night, and my eye just happened to catch, constantly chasing solder flake inside this box, even though I've washed it like 4 times. My eye just happened to catch, God, there's another little hunk of it. Sorry. Shiny keys. Easily distracted. Okay. My eye just happened to catch the backside of this transformer, and I'm like, I can see wire. Let me show you what I mean. Let me unthread all of this. If we take a minute and we go down the wire as it's making its turns through the transformer, we've got a really bad scorch mark here. Then we've got bare exposed wire right here. Look at that. I just caught the glint of this out of the corner of my eye. And where that was on this wrap going on the bottom side. You can see where it was burning, arcing right down in here. So I've had this happen. I had one box that I built it for a raffle one time, and it ran great. First owner, it ran great. The second owner drove the holy shit out, blew it up. Took it to a local tech, and the tech got in there and started slamming his soldering iron around and said, here, I changed the pills out, it's all good to go. Well, he took it back home, it blew up right away. So what'd they do? They got on Facebook and they tried to cry about it. It ended up going to 123 shop. Danny took it all apart and he figured out that where the wires are making the turns through the transformers, the guy was taking his soldering iron and prying against the front of the transformer and shoving the wires into the front of the transformer. So he was shoving the soldering iron up against this lip, and it caused a cut on both sides of the wire. And unless you were willing to take it apart, you would have never seen it. Every once in a while, it'd arc out, because the wires would jiggle around just right, touch. I can almost guarantee you that's exactly what was happening here, right here. And you straight up see where it's been arcing and burning through, like a lot. So, needless to say, we're going to pull this piece of wire out and we're going to rewrap this thing and get this whole section all put back together. And I think we found the culprit, because I'm like, there is something causing this to go wrong. This 2-pill section is constantly something that not the average day Joe technician is going to, he's going to just change the transistors. He's going to run it on the bench, and unless it failed right there on the bench, he's never going to see it. Now this amp's designed to sit like this, flipped over. So that means the wires are going to change, and they're going to change how they're laying inside the transformer. So when you test it, the amp's sitting flat on the bench, but when you flip it over, I bet you it's when it started making contact. So just saying, we found the problem. Yay, finally found the problem. It's not like this wire hasn't been burned up a couple dozen times in several different places. I mean, we've got a burn here. We've got another really good burn, kind of rub mark here. But that is our problem. There is no better feeling than the feeling that I have right now. That, and when the customer calls me and says, man, I hooked the box up and everything worked great, I'm freaking happy. There's nothing in this whole game we call radio that makes me happier than what I just did. And when the customer calls, I'm going to save this for you, 300, and I'm going to give this back to you when I see you here in a couple days. Because I'm here to tell you, I have a feeling this little cut piece of wire has been nothing short of the bane of your existence when it comes to this box. A little tiny piece of wire can screw up the whole mess. I'm here to tell you. Well, we've got the whole thing back in one piece now. So it's got 24 new transistors in it. You'll notice that we took out the output piece of coax. We're going to replace this with a piece of 393. This set over here, like so. And we're going to replace this with a piece of 393, something I know that's not going to fail you. I'm sure this has been running great for years, but we're going to give you a little bit of an upgrade there. The dual 8-gauge wires, I couldn't handle that. I couldn't handle that. And it was causing these things to be sagging way in voltage and way in current, all the way down here on the end. If you're feeding all the current and voltage in on this end, by the time it gets, you got to think, 35 amps worth of draw total. By the time we get down here to the end, shit's starving to death. And it's on the edge of the heat sink, where it's going to have good airflow, so it's not from an overheat issue. This here, that's a burnt cut piece of wire. Now, I got digging through the scrap bin and I was able to find a piece of black and white, same gauge wire, Teflon, and that's what I wrapped in here. Your other options would have been black, solid black, or red, and I didn't want to break from the color theme. So unless you knew this was here and you've seen this video, you wouldn't even know that this has been taken apart and repaired. So between the knurled up piece of heat sink underneath the transistor that's keeping the transistor from sitting flat, and the dike piece of wire on the backside, and I mean, it was right there. And I just barely could see it. And I'm like, man, I better unwrap that transformer and find out what's going on, or otherwise this thing's going to be back here and I'm going to look like a dumbass. Because I hadn't found anything that was like screaming at me saying, here it is, here's your problem. Okay, so what we're going to do with this is we're going to drill this out. We're going to put an actual strainer leaf, a Heiko strainer leaf, and we're going to bring a single piece of 1/0 gauge cable in here instead of 2 pieces of 4. And we're going to solder it right to the middle of this thing, just like that. Will the lid even close? I didn't even bother to measure that before I built this stupid thing. It's like, man, this is going to look cool, so I built it. Let's see. Is it going to clear it? Oh yeah, we'll make it clear. We'll tight, but we'll make it happen. Put a piece of Kapton on the lid, Kapton tape. And then we're going to use a single piece of ground in the 1/0 persuasion. And how we're going to do the ground, you're going to see, is it's going to be a little trick. There's part of me, though, and I should have done this before I put the transistor down. I didn't even think about it. But what I could have done was simply bring the 0 gauge down, solder it to the board, and then add 2 or 3 screw points that attach to the heatsink, and then gone through and then like right in here, added a screw, right in here, added a screw, another added a screw, added a screw, added a screw, added a screw, and done that on both sides. To where it was pulling current from the giant amount of metal mass, this giant amount of metal mass underneath the transistors. There's just a lot of metal here. And this aluminum's ability to carry ground is going to far outstrip at any time, in any argument, any conversation, what I can do with wires. But we're going to get pretty close. We did get rid of the tubes. It had brass tube or copper tubes that went down this thing, and it had little pieces of 12 gauge going off to that. We're going to get away from that. We're going to probably pull the ground in somewhere over here on this side of the cabinet. We're going to solder it to the board, and then we're going to take and we're going to run some runners off and have it dropping in different places on the board. Help spread that ground out so we can carry more current to the transistors, because the way this is sitting now, most of this board is floating above ground. I mean, we got a ground attachment here and another ground attachment here. And then we got a screw here, a screw here, a screw here, and then another screw here, and nothing else is making contact to the board or to the heatsink. Just saying. Just saying. So I'm going to throw some 393 in here. I'm going to throw the power wire in here, and we're going to start getting this thing ready to where we can run it, and let's see how it actually works. We have not adjusted the input tune, and we have not adjusted the output tune yet to compensate for the transistors, the new transistors, which there is going to have to be a little bit of a capacitance adjustment. But we'll come back to that here in a minute. Well, okay, so I got our power wires put in, and I went and I ran it, and it blew the protection diode completely out of my 2-pil driver. And I went, uh-oh, what did I do wrong? There was no capacitance on the positive rail coupling to ground. None. So there was a bunch of garbage that ran up the positive wire and ran up the negative wire, and it found the protection diode inside this box and just made it go poof. So we added some caps in here, and then we added these, just keeping it old school, keeping it real. These are old school plastic capacitors. They work awesome for this job. I used them in another 24-pil I built not too long ago, about a year ago. But at the end of the day, we got our octagauge soldered in, and our little cross genome-looking brace thing here allows us to spread the current to these transistors evenly and these transistors evenly. And the ones down the middle kind of take up the gap from the other two leads. So it's working really, really, really good. Got another problem. None of the fans on this amp work. Don't know why. I put power to it and turned it on, fan started smoking. So once I get this portion of the video shot, I got to pull this off, and I was going to do this anyhow. If I flip this up, there's no fan guards on this stuff. None. And these don't even want to turn. So I have to take this apart and figure out what's going on here. But I'll come back to that here in a minute. Let's focus on functionality. So let's click the focus over to auto. We've got 1 aught gauge coming out of this thing. We're going to say, start out on the bottom scale. So that is a 1000 watt in 1X. It's a 1000 watt on average, and a 5 watt slug and reverse back from the Bird 10,000 watt dummy load. So let's see, this is off, that's on, that's off. Hello, 1, 2, 20 whole watts of drive. Let's put it in the 24-pil. Hello, audio. Oh, look at that. 24-pil came unhooked. Son of a deadly fart. Okay. Hello. 20 watts in gets us, hello. Oh God, about 600 watts out. So let's go ahead and let's hit this with the 2-pil. Hello. So now we're going to hit this with 400 watts drive. We're going to go on up to 2X. We're going to turn on the 24-pil. Hello. Disappeared off the scale. We're going to go down to 5X. So now we're looking at this middle scale, and we're adding 2 zeros. Hello. Hello. About 3,800 watts peak with hello audio. About 400 watts of drive. This box is working great. This thing is screaming. The downside to this thing is that the ferrite beads in this thing are just singing like a violin. But I have a feeling once I put 6 new fans in this thing, you're not going to be able to even hear them vibrating anyhow. So, this is all running and running correctly. The input SWR is like a watt. With 400 going in, I got 1 watt coming back. So this is all running right. Let's take a minute. Let me pop the bottom off of this thing and let's figure out what's going on with the fans. Well, I think we cracked the code on this. Looks like battery acid or something has gotten on these. They've been wet with something. I mean, they didn't even try to turn. I like their cute little attempt at choking, though. They've got little pieces of ferrite hanging all over the place. Even this shit's got solder balls on it. God, man. Oh. Yeah, it smells like acid or something that's on these. Okay, well, nothing says good friendship like, hey, what's $100 worth of fans amongst buddies? Let's start over. I've gone through almost 100 fans this month. Oh. This is my last 6 120 millimeters I have in this place. Oh, I just sat down and ordered 100 more. This is ridiculous. Okay, so we got 6 matched sun-on fans. The stickers don't match, but the amp load, RPM, blade count, that kind of stuff all matches. So, yeah. We now have 6 working fans. Yay! Working fans. Working fans are good. So, now all I got to do is put the fans on the case and hook the amp up and see if the fans stay running when we key it. I think I've added enough capacitors on the inside of this thing. The reason I couldn't let this amp go, and the reason I wanted to see it get put back into one piece, was because of this overwhelmingly large heatsink that's on this thing. I couldn't bring myself to just throw it in the trash. Little did I know that I'd spend 2.5 days working on this. That means I need to overhaul the fans on the lid too. One massive headache at a time. All right, now I gotta flip this around. I gotta get this mounted to the heatsink. Okay, fans are working. We're in 5X. We're all the way down on 12 volts at the moment. But, hello. We're still making 3,800 watts of power. Oh no, 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 no. No, no, no. Here we go. Off the scale. Let's go right on down to 5X. Hello. 2,500 watts of power. Let's bring our volts up. Now remember, we lifted the grounds on these fans. So we can come way up in voltage on this and we don't have to worry about killing the fans. I really wonder how they cut this. I mean, these are somewhat round, but now they look looks a lot better with the guards on it. But oh, almost 4,000, no problem. Okay, so amp's working, everything's happy. That's just massive old school, man. With a little bit of my twist on it. 7-turn split or 5-turn splitters, 7-turn combiners. 1,500, so it'd be 1,000 on the or 500 on the input, 1,000 on the output. Absolutely no capacitance on any of the sections. Running it at 100 ohm on 22 gauge wire back to here. We've got our single pass 1 to 3 combiner going through a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 turn combiner on the final stage. Doorknob capacitance, you can add, you can do it this way, it's just not very efficient. Sorry about that. You can do it this way, it's just not very efficient. Yeah, just a fun little build, and I'm glad I'm done with it. I'm really glad I'm done with it, to be honest with you. let's go do the lid. So I did the fan lid, and before I go and I seal this up, you know, I made this big thing about how I was going to redo the ground, I was going to do this, that, and the other thing, and I stand here and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, dude, if you're going to do it right. And so what I ended up doing is I took all the screws off the whole board, left the transistors screwed down, went through and added a screw here, 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 another one out here, another one out here, one here, one here, one here, one here, one here, 4 over here in the corner, or 3 over here in the corner, and added another screw here. And I had to go through and bink and poke through the board and just mark the heatsink. I took the whole board off, drilled the holes in the heatsink, cleaned the whole board off, repasted all the transistors, put everything back together again. I did that today. And I totally forgot to mention that in the previous segment. I was like, oh, okay, I got power wires in. I'm just glad to have this all in one piece. I really, 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 really am. This is a piece of the coax of the gods. I just had to use it in 1 amp. Just 1 amp, just so I could say I did it. I was going to do 393 here. This has got close to, if not more, power handling capability. This is like tri-shielded coax. 1, 2, 3 shields. Yeah. Put RG400 on the input. We increased our ground bond here to the case, but we also gave it an external grounding lug. So we added a piece of like 7/8 ground strip that goes down to the case, hooked it up with a couple eyelets, 1/0 ground cable, of course, to the cabinet. So not only do we have to add capacitors, we added some more decoupling here. I mean, how many other people you know that got ferrite just laying around, just chilling, that is good for 1/0 gauge cable? This guy. I wanted to try and keep this as true old school as I could, but add a little bit of personal flair to it. I think I've achieved that. I'm pretty sure this box is going to run absolutely beautiful for 300. Like I said, this is his spare. He's been running a 24 pill that I built him with the transistors out of this amplifier originally, and man, ask him. He's like, I'm a believer now. He's seeing numbers out of that 24 pill he was never able to achieve with this. And I get it. This is, in its day, this was badass. This is literally a bone-for-bone copy of a Messenger setup, though. The capacitors, the turn ratios, and the transformers, the board layout, the splitter design, the output combiner design. This all is a bones-for-bones copy of Messenger School, old school. I couldn't bring myself to tear this one apart. It was in such good shape. I mean, hell, I wouldn't even be afraid to run it for a little while. You know what I mean? But today has been exhausting. It was like double the amount of work because I decided I didn't want to fill the whole cabinet up with wires and make it look like a spaghetti mess. I wanted it to run correctly. So capitalizing on the ability to get current down to the heatsink through here, capitalizing on the ability to get current to the case, capitalizing on adding a couple screws in just the right places, and increasing the ground potential allowed us to completely drop out that second copper rail bar that they had going down both sides of this thing. I'm just glad to be done. I'm really, really glad to be done with this box. I come out here at 7:45 this morning and it's now 7:07 at night. So now I think I've got everything covered. I've got everything documented the way I should for you guys all to watch. How about I put the lid on this thing and let's run it. 1000 watt slug in 5X. A little bit of whoop whoop, a little bit of love. Oh, all right. So that's the 2950 hitting the 2-pill. We're hitting it with a 2-pill. Okay. So let's see. If I hit this with the blue coax, it'll give me another 120 watts of drive out of it. So we should see just a hair over 4,000, I think. Right at 4 grand. Let's take a look over here at our current amp draw on this situation. This radio radio doesn't have a lot of bird. So let's see here. If I grab this radio, now we're going to go to the Striker Derail 955. Let's turn our average numbers up a little bit. No problem. Well, 300. I think I'm done with this one, my man. I think it almost would have been easier just to have a whole brand new board made and let me lay down all my own parts, but doesn't matter. 24 transistors, all new electrical distribution systems, 6 new fans. That's it. I'm calling a wrap on this one. It has been a long day, and brother, I'm going to tell you what. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a few days, and I'm going to bring this to you in person. I cannot wait to hang out with you in a couple days. We're going to have ourselves a hell of a lot of fun. Now, to my YouTube family. I am going on me a little bit of a road trip. I'm calling it the Grand Tour, because I highly doubt that I'm going to go out and do one of these for a while after this. And I am making a ton of stops, and I'm seeing a bunch of people, and we're going to have a whole lot more content, just like that motor mouth valve video, but with a little bit of an extra different twist on it. You'll see. Believe me when I tell you, the studio equipment, the camera, the lights, the microphones, and all the other shit at sea, we're going to pack it up, and it's all going with me. You guys are my extended family and a long way roundabout. And I want to say thank you for tuning in, following along, and keeping abreast of the current situation over here at this little powerhouse I call Mudduckville. Special gift for you, 300. See you in a couple days, my friend. I appreciate every single one of you guys. We'll see you. Click.